We all hear about the Great Depression, right? Or the 2008 financial crisis. But what about the other ones? Some of history's most insane financial collapses, the ones that literally wiped out fortunes and changed the world, are stories you probably never heard in history class. Well, we're about to change that.
It's a pretty wild question when you think about it, because these forgotten events, they hold some incredibly powerful lessons about how markets actually work, how shockingly fragile they can be, and what it takes to trigger a full-on, widespread panic. So that's what we're going to do. We are counting down 5 of the biggest but most overlooked market crashes ever to see what kind of timeless truths they can teach us today.
Okay, so here's the game plan. We're going to start with the threat of global dominoes, the 90s. Then we'll look at crashes driven by 2 things that never ever change: pure human panic and raw geopolitics. We'll wrap up with the one crisis that literally forged America's financial system. And then we'll pull out the key lessons for you.
All right, first up, the 1990s. This was the decade that really showed the world just how fast a problem in one country could spiral into a full-blown global crisis.
So, kicking off our countdown at number 5, we have the 1994 Mexican Peso Crisis. But to really get what happened here, you first need to understand a very specific kind of financial disaster.
And that's something called a currency crisis. Basically, this is when a country's money suddenly loses a huge amount of its value. It is literally like the financial ground just vanishing from under everyone's feet. And as you can imagine, it almost always leads to absolute panic.
And yeah, that is exactly what went down in Mexico in 1994. The government made a surprise move to devalue the peso. Investors, terrified their money was about to be worthless, just freaked out. Billions of dollars fled the country almost overnight. The Mexican stock market absolutely cratered, and what should have been a local problem turned into an international emergency. It was a huge wake-up call about just how volatile emerging markets can be.
All right, let's move on to number 4, because you can see how this theme builds. Just 3 years later, this same kind of domino effect played out, but on an even bigger scale. We're talking about the 1997 Asian Financial Crisis. It all started in Thailand when its currency just collapsed. From there, the panic spread like wildfire. That's what they call contagion. And it slammed into economies like Indonesia and South Korea. The final domino? A total meltdown. Stock markets across the region plunged, businesses went under, and millions of people saw their life savings just disappear. It was a terrifying lesson in just how connected we all are.
Okay, for this next section, we're shifting gears a bit. These next 2 crashes weren't really caused by currency problems. No, they were caused by 2 of the most powerful forces on Earth: raw human emotion and good old-fashioned geopolitics.
Coming in at number 3 is a day so infamous, it has its own scary name: Black Monday. On October 19, 1987, the Dow Jones Industrial Average fell, get this, 22% in a single day. Just let that sink in for a second. It was, and it still is, the biggest one-day percentage drop in the Dow's entire history, an absolute total collapse.
But here's the craziest part: the why. See, unlike 2008, there was no huge systemic meltdown causing this. This crash was driven by pure fear. It was a panic that got massively amplified by a new technology at the time called program trading. These were computer algorithms that were built to automatically sell stocks if the market dropped by a certain amount. So when the selling started, the programs kicked in, which pushed prices even lower, which triggered even more automatic selling. It was this vicious, self-feeding downward spiral, all fueled by computer code.
Okay, moving on to the number 2 forgotten crash on our list. Now this time the trigger wasn't market psychology. It was a geopolitical power play that sent shockwaves through the entire global economy.
So back in 1973, OPEC put an oil embargo on nations that had supported Israel during the Yom Kippur War. The effect was immediate and it was staggering. The price of oil didn't just go up, it quadrupled, practically overnight. Suddenly, the world's economic engine was being starved at the one fuel it couldn't live without.
The result? A devastating stock market crash that went on for 2 years. Unemployment shot up, inflation went through the roof. I mean, it was a mess. The takeaway here is crystal clear. A political decision made halfway across the globe can slam the brakes on the world economy just as hard, if not harder, than any financial mistake.
And that brings us to our number 1 crash. This one is the oldest on the list, but it's arguably the most important. Why? Because it didn't just cause a crisis,
It fundamentally changed the financial DNA of the United States forever.
At number 1, we have the Panic of 1907. And hey, if you think bank runs and market collapses are a modern thing, this story from over a century ago is definitely gonna prove you wrong.
The whole thing started with a super risky bet. A couple of speculators tried to corner the market on shares of a copper company, and they failed spectacularly. That set off a chain reaction. The bank that funded the whole scheme got into trouble, which made people nervous about other banks. And then, trust, that invisible glue that holds the whole system together, it just evaporated. That led to nationwide bank runs and ultimately the collapse of the stock market.
But here's why this is such a BFD. Before 1907, America didn't have a central bank to step in and stop the bleeding. The whole system was built on that fragile trust we were talking about. The sheer terror of the 1907 panic was the catalyst, the thing that led directly to the creation of the Federal Reserve. Our entire modern financial system was literally forged in the fire of this one forgotten crisis.
So, wow, we've just walked through 5 massive, world-changing crashes that you almost never hear about. What's the point of all this? What can we learn from it? What are the big takeaways?
Well, I think the biggest lesson is that risk can come from pretty much anywhere. A market can get completely shattered by a currency devaluation, like in Mexico, or a contagion that sweeps across the continent, like in Asia. It can be brought to its knees by pure mass psychology, which we saw on Black Monday, or by a geopolitical shock like the oil crisis. And as the Panic of 1907 showed us, sometimes the danger is baked right into the fragility of the system itself.
By understanding these lesser-known crises, we just get a much richer, more complete picture of what risk really looks like. And it leaves us with one final question to chew on. As we try to navigate today's really complex world, which of these powerful, forgotten lessons is the one we absolutely cannot afford to ignore?